I've always really been occupied with like the personal conversation. I have always had a skill at the one-on-one talk that happens, in the corner of the party or while taking a good long walk, that sort of thing. And yet there are just some things socially that I was always inept at. And one of those things was talking to women that I was attracted to. I would get like the like sock stuck in my throat. And at some point, I wanted to do something about that. And I did like a lot of study on the pickup arts and those sorts of things. And most of them really made me nauseous. I tried some of it out, and somehow the woman I would be talking to would like see right through what I was doing. And yet there was like this terrible, torturous like tension in me, because when I would ask people, what do I say? Like, what do you mean you met somebody? What did you do? I would just be they would say something like, oh, you just have to be yourself. And I'm like, but who is that? and there was this one school that did not make me nauseous, which was called Authentic World. They did a program called the Authentic Man Program. And back in 2010, for many reasons, maybe too long to explain, I was deployed as a soldier in Afghanistan. And then I had this idea that I wanted to do something, I wanted to go on an adventure after that adventure. And so I decided to go to Burning Man and go to a Zen monastery and learn to meditate. And then I would do the Authentic Man program. And those things, Burning Man was great. The Zen monastery was probably the hardest thing I ever did. Just 4.5 hours of sitting each day with zero prior experience. But it really did open something in me. So then when I went to the Authentic Man program, I was kind of primed to have a breakthrough. And a breakthrough I got. On one hand, that was my introduction to circling as a practice, and they basically pulled the rug out under me. Like the whole their marketing and so on was like, this is like for you to get to have the women in your life that you want, and we're actually going to teach you how to be yourself. And I remember at the final moment, it was like Becker, who was leading it, was having this, he could just not get through to me somehow, get through to the deeper level. And so he had these 3 gorgeous female facilitators hold me down. And then he just dog whispered at me, saying something like, you're just like a really good dog who has just been beaten maybe once too many, and you're all the way inside your cage. And I would like you to just come out for a moment so I can talk to you. And I had that Aletheia moment, the remembering who I am. And a single tear rolls down my cheek. And I remember quite clearly after that, we had this Thai takeaway dinner that was the best meal I ever had, because I was open in a completely new way. And I decided shortly after that, this is the thing that I want to dedicate myself to. I'm going to burn the boats. It took a couple of years for me to fully integrate that insight, but I'm going to burn the boats and resolve to move away from the life I was living. And the only way for me would be forward. And a few years later, I then, like coming to that realization, I went to Boulder, Colorado, and took the Train the Trainer program to learn circling and facilitation.
So what has it been like for you to start leading, and you've been leading stuff for quite some years?
Well, I think that my experience has been characteristic of many people who've gotten into this. It's a lot of like doing workshops for 2 or 3 people that I've put tons and tons of work into, and like, okay, so well, whoever shows up is the right person, and yeah, it could be hard in that way that you really have something to offer and you just know it's great, and then not getting all that much traction to begin with, but eventually people start showing up if what you do is great. It's just this thing about like being a good facilitator is not necessarily being a good entrepreneur. And a lot of this work is, they usually say like half of this work is just getting people to the seats. But once they're there, it's it's one of the most deeply stir kinds of situations. You know, it's timeless and it's selfless and effortless and rich. And yeah, I mean, I could do it all the time if people would get in those seats.
Why do you think people aren't?
Well, of course, like being me, I have a few theories. I think that on one hand, like the beauty and the richness of these practices comes primarily for people who are like a little bit off the beaten path. We attract a lot of neurodiverse people, and I was certainly myself like really attracted to it because it was like I was being given the tools that everybody had already. It's like everybody else got the manual and could just do these things about like just meeting somebody, and it would just naturally flow on an instinctive level. There was all this unconscious competence. And while there are some social things that I was always good at, it seems like there were always like these things that were missing. And what I got with authentic relating and circling was, well, have you tried looking at it like this? And all like this whole slew of different experiments that illustrated like these are the tools. This is how you can be yourself. But like the holy grail, like the breakthrough that we all have yet to do is like, so can we bring this into the mainstream? Can we make this like a set of practices that are desirable for, you know, anybody? And so far, that's been difficult. And I think that part of it is kind of a social norm, that there are certain things that you're either good at or that you're not. That they're not really skills to train, but like innate things. It's like, because you just be yourself. Can such a thing be trained? Can being be trained rather than something that you do? And it can be a hard sell to break through that norm. So that's one thing.
So I'm curious how you would describe like it comes as like your superpowers. Like what are you really good at when you lead?
I think orchestration is something that I'm quite good at. I love to construct a learning experience that kind of has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and to do it in such a way where I get the opportunity to meet people where they're at, and then use their input as like an integrated thread into the rest of the workshop, referring back and forth and creating a narrative that isn't so much like linear, like I'm saying it has a beginning and an end, but somehow the jumping back and forth is like this thing that you said. And this is kind of like what we were at when you were describing this situation. That's maybe the kind of thing that I was, like I said, I was always good at those one-on-one conversations, because somehow a good conversation isn't just a linear thing. Like the words are linear, but the experience is not bound within time. It's more like a tapestry.
So I know you've hosted like loads and loads and loads of workshops, so it might be hard to answer this specifically, but like what's your sense of what people take away from your workshops?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of different things. I can maybe speak to what I hope they take away, or what I aim for them to take away, which is less about them gaining the skills and more about how will those skills affect the people in their lives. And I had this one student who came to my workshop, and his girlfriend came to the workshop, and then they were out of the country for a while, and he came back and visited me, and he said, you know, you helped me break through some really deep-seated traumatic patterns that I see would have made me like my father towards my family. And having these tools to make those things conscious, me and my girlfriend, made it possible for me to break through that pattern. So I think that the main thing to take away from these workshops isn't actually necessarily like new skills, except maybe an opportunity to practice like something different, such that ultimately you will learn as you go along in life, because a workshop is a short thing. And if I can guide your consciousness towards some patterns, so that you can keep doing that, that's when something will have a great impact on your life and the lives around you. So I really like that thing about I want for your family to have the best you in their lives. That's the thing that I'm aiming for.
If I translate that into my way of speaking, like it sounds like it's more like unlearning that you're aiming for than learning.
Yeah, we like in the school that I'm from, we have this concept of undamming, that the stories that we'll tell over and over again have this tendency to become kind of flat and distanced and like at an arm's length. It's like I can just press play on my tape and people will be entertained, but am I really in that? Is that story a living, transformative thing? And so one of the things that I find really important about relational arts and practices is to have the capacity or the humility to start looking at things anew and be a beginner again. It's kind of an experimental mindset also. Like, okay, what if I know this, I'm comfortable in this, but how might I approach it as if I didn't?
Yeah. So how do you do that?
Well, so I'm someone who's quite good at words, and I love recombining them and so on, but there's a limitation in them. And the limitation is that somehow when I represent something as like a tree, I don't experience the full richness of a tree. It's just like this unit in my in my mind. If I experience someone like you, and maybe that's a much more complicated like setup, but if it's still just like a set of words and stories, then I won't actually get to experience having a full relationship with you. So it kind of goes two ways. One thing is that if there's something happening between us and we want to have a look at that, then we can use the words to make that thing explicit. Like, we can talk about it. And sometimes authentic relating is kind of seen as the art of making what's implicit explicit, so we can so we can see. But I also really believe that there's an equally important piece that goes the other direction, which is like, okay, this thing that we're talking about, what is the soma of it? How does it come into like full richness in this moment, which is something that's far beyond the scope of words. It's an openness of the senses. And maybe deeper than just the senses. It's an openness of the heart, body, dare I say soul.
So, what's the potential here, or like if you were to talk about like a greater vision or a greater hope from having been in connection with these practices for quite some years, what's like, where are we going?
Yeah, I just remembered it's like one of the mottos of circling as I learned it. And it was there's nowhere to go except more fully here. That there is actually a direction that is into depth. And I would love for the people that I meet and that they meet and so on to have more movements in that direction. I think that in itself is has so much potential for healing, and also has a lot of potential for trouble. Like there are times when going deep without like a good container can become quite explosive and troublesome. And that might actually also be like one of the other theories of why it might be difficult to do these things, is like that in a sense, the relational arts or practice is when you go deep, you will find like the critters that are lurking there in the shadows, and accelerating intimacy, which is what this stuff often does, will cause a lot of trouble. So that sort of alchemy, which is something that I talk a lot about in the workshops, is like, if you're going to be a good alchemist, you also need like a strong crucible, as it's called, like a container where these insane reactions can happen. And a strong container is, it's a lot of things, but some of the primary things are like your set and your setting. Where and how are you having a deep conversation? But also, is your nervous system ready for this? Have you had your therapy? so that maybe the monsters in the shadows are familiar to you. These are things that kind of move around it. And I also think that having like a good contemplative practice of whatever kind, whether you're doing Tai Chi or whether you're meditating or all of these things, is also quite important to be ready for what might happen. And so it's kind of like there's a piece to this that's very esoteric, like meaning like almost magical. Like that going in deep can be really profound. But if you're going to be a mystic or like some other esoteric practitioner, it can be tricky to do that if you're just coming in from the street and just meeting these things head on. That might be also why sometimes it can be tricky to fill the workshops. Not least if somebody has a bad experience with it, and that does happen.
From where you are now, after years of practice, what do you feel the most excited to lead? Right, yeah, from here.
So I've talked a little bit about the Holy Grail of like bringing it out into the world. I really am excited at the possibilities of bringing this stuff to people who are outside our like usual demographics. Outside the people who are either like very spiritually engaged or in communities that value these practices quite highly. Like I said, it's a tricky thing, and you need to be very like soft, and it has to be a soft approach. So I am not particularly a like what you might call a depth junkie. I think that there's a lot of depth to be had in a lot of things, and I adore that moment where I can see that someone is seeing something for the first time. Somehow that tickles like these deep memories of when you were a kid and you saw something for the first time, or you made that connection for the first time. Like for me, it was like walking through the library and being exposed to new ideas and so on. There's almost like a synesthetic experience to it, like a smell or a particular feeling on your skin when like those new neural pathways are being made. That's maybe the thing that I could be that I'm addicted to, seeking, craving. But it doesn't necessarily need to be me who's having that experience for me to enjoy it.
Is there anything more? Like just from having this conversation, is there something I haven't asked you that seems important to bring before we end?
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe one thing I'd like to mention is that there's a lot of, I think a lot of allergy arises around these practices. I know a lot of people who have stayed well away from my workshops, even though they're my close friends and they would trust me to do it. There's just something about the language that's used that they cannot unite with. And a lot of that is just the lingo that necessarily arises. There's this thing that I call the curse of intermediacy. It's when you have learned something and you're really into it, and you start the transformation of your mind towards integrating this new learning. It becomes all that you can see, and you're constantly using the lingo. And I guess I want to say that that's perfectly fine. When you're first, like, for example, learning nonviolent communication, I see a lot of people like policing each other's languages, like, well, that's not actually a feeling, you know. And those are just stages in learning. And I would say be compassionate with yourself and with others who are in that stage, because it's really important in order to get back to like the really juicy stuff, which is where, like, in the unconscious competence. And like at Zen monasteries in ancient Japan and China, usually they wouldn't really let you out of the monastery unless you'd been there for at least 10 years, because they were afraid that you would go out and unskillfully and like blab your mouth about Zen. But I'm quite happy that I was let out after just 3 months, and could run around blabbing my mouth about Zen. And I'm sure that I annoyed some people, but I'm also quite sure that a lot of people liked what I was bringing. So go and do it.